This is a process. Environment trumps willpower. You can't just will yourself to change and be different. You need to set up an environment, and people make up your environment, right? So you need to be intentional and deliberate about fleshing out your team in such a way where you can create an environment where you can be impatient with process. In other words, I'm always trying to improve the process.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast, chiropractic's #1 business podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
Great to be in the studio with you, Doc, today. And all of you who are listening in, hey, welcome to this episode. We wanted to do a friendly reminder that, hey, if you like watching things on YouTube, I don't know about you, my kids, I have a icon on my TVs, and it tends to be one that they spend a lot of time on. And they're not allowed actually to be on it, to be honest, but they do it anyway. I take it off and somehow it gets back on. But did you know that we are on YouTube? And we'd love for you to check us out on YouTube. Dr. Stephen, I know that we've got some of our listeners who love watching us every week on YouTube. So check us out. And for those of you who are old school and you like listening to your podcasts, hey, on all the streaming platforms, we'd love for you to continue to do that. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Darren. He actually said earlier this week, I was in a mastermind with him, one of our awesome docs. He said, yeah, I have my Bible app and I have the CEO podcast. That's right. That's what's keeping me moving forward. I said, hey, man, that is awesome. I said, nobody ever said that before. If it's okay, I'm going to remember that because that was
second most important message in town, right?
Exactly. So anyway, Dr. Darren, shout out to you for being an incredible chiropractor, incredible leader, great student, and for your awesome support and all the great work you're doing serving your community. Hey, guys, we also are on Instagram. You can check out Dr. Stephen at Dr. Stephen Franson, Dr. Pete Camiolo on Instagram. Check us out. Also, the Remarkable Practice at Instagram as well. We are constantly just adding value to you, hopefully throughout the week. Dr. Stephen, I love the reels, by the way, you've been doing. Everybody's been commenting like, man, I've been listening to Dr. Stephen a lot more recently. He's been crushing it with dropping all these nuggets. So, man, you're dropping gold all the time. So, guys, make sure you're following us on Instagram. We just want to continue to encourage you guys. You know what? Dr. Stephen, and this has been a theme that I've had this year for me. Just we're in a marathon. You know, it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. We do things in sprints, but it's ultimately a marathon. And so you've got to make sure you're keeping yourself hydrated and you're keeping your nutrition up all throughout the race. That's why you got to stay tuned in because we continue to add value to you daily. We're giving you encouragement, nuggets, tips, things that are going to help guide you so you can run the race. You can run your race all the way through the finish line, not to it, but through it, right, though? Check us out, guys. We're loving supporting and serving you in these ways. So excited to be with you here today, Doc Stephen.
Always stoked to be in the studio. Extra special weekend because I've got my social media expert out here for the weekend. You guys, if you were at the last immersion, you met Michael Humphreys, who I want to call Dr. Michael Humphreys every time I talk to him because he is the doctor of social media and really how to create compelling content, not just how to make viral videos, but how to create compelling content that by nature goes viral, right? So it's just the spirit of that. I love his passion for it and his expertise around it. So it's fun to have him floating around the studio here, which is extra special and cool. We're going to have a big weekend. So we do a lot of batch recording. We teach you guys best practices. And that's one of them is just getting into the zone, getting in state, and just thinking about your ideal client, customer, patient, and just saying, hey, what can I share that will make their lives better, right? That's always my swing thought. Like before I get in front of the camera, before I start a podcast, before I get up on the stage, my first thoughts are, if these people would just do what I told them to do, their lives would get better. It's like, that is the granite I stand on. It's like, I just commit to not talking about what I don't know about. And I will not tell you to do things that we're not doing and haven't walked out and proven. So we're just trying to share it because what we want, guys, is we want to compress time for you. We want you to avoid making stupid, expensive mistakes. You have 4 limited resources: time, energy, focus, and money. And your job is to marshal those. And we want to see you optimize that. So when we say we teach from scar tissue, guys, we teach from scar tissue. Dr. Pete and I, man, we have screwed this up 7 ways to Sunday. We've made all the mistakes, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to compress time. We're trying to pull success forward for you. Whatever success means to you, whatever that looks like to you, what we're trying to do is help you see around corners. So you don't know what's coming down the road. The best way to know what's coming down the road is talk to somebody who's been down the road, and you're talking to two guys who have been there. So Dr. Pete, what a blessing that we have this platform to share this message. And I love this concept. We introduced it at the last immersion. Was some of y'all have this backwards, right? You think, oh, I have to share a message because I have this business I'm trying to build. And that's backwards. God's given you a business, a platform in order to share the message, right? So you've got to ask yourself, what is that message that we're supposed to be sharing? And I know what message we're supposed to be sharing here this morning. The truth is what the world needs now is chiropractic. And what chiropractic needs right now is more successful chiropractors, as we are just positioned with Make America Healthy Again, and this movement that is clearly sweeping the nation. We started the question in the beginning of the year with new wineskins is, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the demand that's coming? You got to ask yourself, you got to check yourself. What would happen if the demand doubled? What would happen in your practice? If demand doubled, what would break? If you had twice as many new patients all of a sudden, or twice as many reported findings, or twice as many adjustments, or twice as many reactivations or recommitments, or R4s, R5s. What if you had twice as big of a team right now? What would break, right? Mm-hmm. So now what if you 10x that business? What if the demand 10x's, right? So this whole concept of going, oh my gosh, yes, I have exposure here, I have clear capacity issues. Man, Dr. P, big part of what we do here is to help people expand their capacity, because at the end of the day, businesses grow into margin.
Yeah, I think this is a great segue as well to our conversation for today, Dr. Stephen. I know you and I are, we want to talk about a couple things today. And I think speaking into this, what would happen if your practice or business was to double, which is a framework that we're really using, like you said, associated with this new wineskin. And, historically, we've always asked the question, what happens if you were to step out of your practice for 6 months? What would break? Now we're saying, what would happen if your practice or your business doubled in the next 6 months, let's say 12 months? What would break? That's such a powerful question. And it leads me to this conversation that we want to have today with you, which is about a virtue that has always been something that my mom sang a song to us growing up about, because I struggled with it, which was patience. I'm not talking about patience like seeing more patience. I'm talking about the attribute, the virtue of the fruit of the spirit. It's called patience, and it's something that I've always struggled with. And I know my mom used to sing a song to us growing up. Whenever she would hear my brothers and I, we would be wrestling, we'd be arguing. Maybe you might call it fighting. We weren't getting along, and she would just start singing this song, have patience, and then it went, don't be in such a hurry. Remember that God is patient too. Just think of all the times that others had to wait for you. And this idea of it was just it was a song, and I still remember it, because she sung it so many times. And in that, that when you're young, your brain and your telomeres are long, and you just remember everything. It just goes deeper. So I just remember that. So, I've learned that throughout my career now, as you grow up and you become a chiropractor, you own business, you have team, and then you have a family, maybe a wife, maybe some kids, as has happened to me. And I'm like, man, I'm being tested all the time, in this area of patience. So, I'm very interested in developing virtue in myself and in my children and my family and those that I work with. I'm always saying, hey guys, we need to be developing virtue in us. What would it look like for us to be virtuous in our leadership? Well, patience is one of the virtues that's actually going to be a catalyst for your growth. Even though it seems like it wouldn't be. You might think oh, if I'm being patient, then that's slowing it down. It's no, actually, going back to John Wooden's, one of my favorite quotes and books is, be quick, but don't hurry. there's a difference. There's a difference between being hurried and being quick. There's a difference there between being patient and getting done, right? It's like you can still get things done and be patient. And so today we want to talk about the difference between, patience with people and being impatient with process, and where you put your patience and why it matters. And where the emphasis is going to be today is the difference between people and process. And we're going to tuck right up in the middle of that, this virtue called patience, and how to navigate that as a leader for yourself and for your team.
Man, I love this topic. This is my crucible, right? So I used to joke that impatience is my superpower. So that's funny to everybody except people that are close to me. All right. So if you get to live with me or work with me, you're like, yeah, no, that's true. So, and what I recognize is like, there's an appropriate time for being impatient, and there's a time where it's wildly inappropriate to be impatient. And I was just trying to discern, like, how do you differentiate, when it's time to be impatient and when it's time to be patient, right? So, and so I love this expression to be patient with people, but impatient with process. It gives you permission to be impatient. And, I really want to be able to unpack that, because there's something to be said for the urgency of business. There's an urgency. Like if you're an on-purpose chiropractor, if you're an on-mission chiropractor, you recognize there's an urgency, right? So you can sense that urgency. And if you're really truly patient-centric, right? If you're really on purpose and mission-driven, if you are really servant-hearted, you can feel the call to really trying to compel people to make change, because it's every choice every day. And there's a compound effect to health. It's either compounding wellness or compounding sickness. It's like every day matters, every choice every day matters. And that can give you this edge, this edge and this urgency of like, listen, if I don't tell you, who's going to tell you? If I don't get you to shift and change your behaviors, who's going to, right? So if you fall out of this practice, you're going to fall into the that dark medical vortex of managing your diseases through pharmacology for a lifetime. And we all know how that is. That's like literally, that just gives you this edge, right? So, and if you really want to make a bigger impact and a bigger income, that carries right over to your team and to your business. Like you have that same urgency in your team and your business when you're setting goals and you're trying to reach goals. And of course, goals are just milestones to let us know that we're on path for realizing our vision story, which is quantified through our goals, right? So, and we can tell ourselves story that it's like, well, I'm just impatient because, we're trying to hit this goal and because that represents impact, right? So you can tell yourself stories, but what you recognize is that very often that impatience can end up damaging or breaking relationships that are critical on that mission. So it's one of those things where it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. If you lose a great relationship or you hurt a relationship, or at least you lose trust. I think you know what I mean by this. It's like literally, man, how did that happen? And my impatience is not serving me here. So, this concept of being patient with people, at one point I had to realize that maybe the secret to seeing more patience was for me to be displaying more patience with my team and with my people. So I'm like, okay, those two are actually going to equate to each other. So that was a new muscle I needed to develop, right? So it's not my natural default. It's not my state. I had to learn that. And at the same time, be a champion of being impatient with process, being impatient with procedure, and being impatient with your systems, and always challenging your systems to know that we can become more efficient and more effective and therefore make a bigger impact.
So this is so powerful. And I know many of you who are listening right now, this is like, you're having those nod the head moment and you're thinking like, oh yeah, okay. I'm hearing what they're saying. I'm hearing what Dr. Steven's saying there about, the fine line of being right on the edge, right? We talk about being the tip of the spear. We talk about, we are in chiropractic. We are swimming upstream. We're countercultural. We know we're in this very precarious place of you got to keep your pivot foot planted. We've talked about this. We talk about the sensitivity of running a world-class business, of doing things with excellence, the standard with which we set, right? So that's that edge. Like, man, you've got to keep your edge. You got to stay sharp. You know, you walk into a huddle, you look in your team's eyes, you can see, you can feel, it's like, man, something's off. Like you don't have your edge today. Like what you can feel like when you know you have your edge, you know you have that urgency. Like I love the definition of urgency, Dr. Stephen, that is urgency or compassion is an urgent rush to help. I love that definition of compassion. It's an urgent rush to help. It's in other words, you know, that you have that urgency when it comes to your process, your procedure, your systems. Like you have to have that edge when it comes to just executing, right? We have to execute with excellence. And there's just got to be this commitment to that at a high level. And there's this commitment to saying, we're doing it great, but there's a greater way. Like we can even do it better. There's still a better way. I'm in this pursuit of this thing that seems to elude me, but I know there's even a better way. It's just, I don't even know what it is, but we're just going to keep training on it until we find it. We're going to keep working on it until we get it. And that commitment stays the same. But what you're talking about at the exact same moment, it's at the exact same time. That's the thing. It's at the exact same moment with people. I'm going to be patient. And for some of us, you that are listening, you have allowed your impatience in terms of process, procedure, standard, whatever, you've allowed that to bleed into the people. And what's happened is you've started to break relationships. You've broken relationships. Probably starts with yourself, but then it goes to the people probably close to you, and you've allowed this to continue to happen. Maybe it's happened repeatedly. Maybe it's actually happened with your team, and you've actually just been through this revolving door of not being able to keep great people around, or whatever it might be for you. That impatience with people part needs to change. Otherwise, you're going to hit a ceiling and scale. You might say, oh, I've scaled them. I've got some level of success. Yeah, but your next level is going to come from this right here. This is where it's going to happen. You may say 95% of your problems are people problems, Dr. Stephen. I heard you say that. It's like, this is what we're talking about.
Exactly.
It's like, this is it. It's like, but but it starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with us. And as you were talking, I thought, man, you know what? We are impatient with process, but we have to be patient with the process of developing people.
Amen.
Okay. We have to be patient with the think about this, guys. What do we say? Hire slow, fire fast. Hire slow. What does that even mean? It means there's a process. Be on the edge on that process. Stick with it. Be impatient with your process. We do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 22, all the way through. Because we care about people so much that we're going to be patient. We're going to go slow because we want to get it right? Otherwise, we're going to spend the rest of the time fixing and dealing with the consequences of not doing it right. And we deal with the consequence, the fallout of moving too fast, because most of you are probably fast movers. That's a lot of our audience, Dr. Stephen, I know has that gift and that cross, that you bear of like making decisions. I'm decisive. I can move fast. I like to, keep moving, and being impatient. Like you said, it's my superpower. So Dr. Stephen, I wanted just to say you have to be patient with the process of developing people, and people develop over time. You got to be patient with the process of interviewing and hiring. You got to be patient with the process of onboarding. And people are rolling their eyes like, oh my God, because I have to keep onboarding people. It seems like I onboard them, but then they give me their notice. I'm like, before I even finished onboarding, it's like, I got to do this all again. Forget it. I'm not doing it anymore. No, we've got to do a better job. We can get this right, guys. We get this right. And on the other side, the fruit of it is that those people you are patient with the process of developing them then are the people that execute the process, the procedure, and the system with the new level of excellence, which is how you break through.
100%, man. So, when we talk about the process of developing our people, it does start with our hiring process, right? So starting with clarity of vision of exactly, what does my business need right now to be able to grow into its next iteration? And what are the attributes of a person that I'm looking to hire specifically for that role? Because God only makes geniuses. You better be able to say, I'm hiring for this role. These are the responsibilities. for this role, and this is the genius that I'm looking for based on these requirements, right? These are the attributes of the person that I'm looking for. So that's a process. And then you market for that person. That's a process. You better write an ad that's going to attract that right person and compel them to, interview for the position and repel everybody that would be wrong. That's a process. And then you've got to be able to interview and screen and vet people. That's a process. Part of the vetting process is we do cognitive profiling. So, when we talk about, hey, you don't have to be awesome at everything, you got to build a team that's awesome at everything. That's just not a tagline. That's a directive. This is not a good idea. This is the law of the jungle. You don't have to be awesome at everything, doc, boss, CEO. You've got to build a team that's awesome at everything. And the best teams in the world are diverse. So if you're the impatient, high thrust, quick start driver, guess what you have to hire to complement that strength of yours? Right. So remember, the strength of the leader becomes the weakness of the organization, unless you reconcile that by bringing in somebody else who's actually, the opposite of your style. Right. So maybe a nurturer, maybe there's somebody who's high pace, high patience, high compliance, and where you have a thrust energy, they have a tenacity energy. Right. So the three dominant cognitive profiles for energy are thrust, allegiance, and tenacity. Thrust is, hey, we're flying around in an airplane right now. Follow me, jump out of the airplane. Let's go. Let's go parachuting. Jump out of the airplane. Let's go. We'll figure it out on the way down. That's high thrust. Allegiance is, I'll jump out of this airplane as long as we all lock arms and we jump out together. Right. That's allegiance. Right. Tenacity is, y'all are out of your minds jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, right? So I packed the chutes. Everybody's chutes are good. I'm going to fly the plane. I'm going to be on the ground. I'm going to land where you guys will need a ride home because somebody's going to need to drive your asses home, right? That's the person that's high tenacity, high detail, high follow through until it's through. Those are complement personalities. Can you see your team in that? As I described that, were you putting faces to what I was describing? That's a diverse team. So if you're the high impatient driver, you better make sure that you have a highly relational, nurturing, high tenacity, high allegiance person on the opposite of your leadership team to complement you. Dr. Pete, this is a process. This is a process. Environment trumps willpower. You can't just will yourself to change and be different. You need to set up an environment, and people make up your environment, right? So you need to be intentional and deliberate about fleshing out your team in such a way where you can create an environment where you can be impatient with process. In other words, I'm always trying to improve the process. I'm measuring, I have data. I know we're doing better. We're trending in the right direction or the wrong direction. And I continually innovate, tinker, improve, test, reiterate. It's an iterative process. That's being impatient with your process so that you can create an environment that attracts the A players who share your core values, buy into your vision story, and those people who you can invest the time that it takes to develop people, and you can be patient with those people, and they will, if you recruit them right, also share the trait of being impatient with the process.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.